floor plan design, structural layout, metrics, and boards all in one place. Hi, I'm Gabe from Arcol, and today I'm bringing you along for a new project redesign of the SR Crown Hall at IIT. Let's get started. Completed in 1956 at the Illinois Institute of Technology, Mies van der Rohe's Crown Hall is one of his most notable and famous works. The first floor of the building itself is meant for studio space for the School of Architecture, while the lower floor is meant for other academic purposes. There's a library, there's seminar rooms, and there's even a computer lab for CAD work and things of such. The interesting thing about this building is that it's basically built inside out. The first floor of the building doesn't have any interior structure, which means that it has a completely open floor plan, so you can customize the studio space however you want with dividers. And that's basically made possible through a ceiling suspension from the roof with massive external steel girders, which leaves for a very open floor plan, and I believe it's really interesting. In this project, you'll see me create the base structure for the basements with the different column layout and etc. And then I'll be working more on separating the different floor plans together. So it's basically going to be structure first, then I'm going to be going into floor plans, and then we're going to be looking at the metrics and then the boards all in one place, which I think is going to be a cool process to watch. Come check it out. Alright, so let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is copy paste the site address into the search bar and just click that, and that's going to generate my site context for me to start working. I'm going to delete the original mask, that's where the building's supposed to be, and I'm going to get to creating my boundaries for my site. I already have the exact measurements for the building itself. It's 120 by 220 feet. But what I want to do is to make it so that my building fits snug inside of my boundaries. I'm going to make my boundaries 5 feet longer on each side. So once I set my setbacks, which I'm going to change to 5 feet, I'm going to also put some height setbacks. My building will fit perfectly snug inside of this boundary. The cool thing about these vertical setbacks, which I haven't shown before, are that you can do a lot of things with them. You know, I put these at just 40 feet for now. You can change the color, you can change the opacity, you can turn them on and off. You can even change the actual geometry of it. Make them kind of like triangles or stuff like that, which is kind of interesting and something that could be cool to use if you have specific restrictions for your site. Here I don't, well, none that I could find, so I'm just using them because I think it looks cool, and I'm pretending as if there were some setbacks vertically for this building. What I'm going to start with right now, what I just did was create the floor plate for my building. Just made a rectangle that's 220 by 120, and right now I'm just checking the floor plans to see what is the height of my different floors. Once I've checked that, I'm going to click the extrude button on the top left, and I'm just going to extrude the base plate to make a mass. Doesn't matter how tall it is, because the way I do things is I modify the height of my building when I create floors. So if I click on my building right here, you can see that I can just click on floors, and it creates floors for my building. Here I'm just going to put 2, because it's just a 2-story building. And for the specific heights, you have different heights. The first one, the ground level is 12 feet, and the second one maybe 18 for first level. Now, one thing that's interesting about this building is that the ground level is 6 feet underground. So I'm just gonna click on building, move it, lock it on the Z-axis, and drop it 6 feet under the context. And there we go. That's basically my site mass that's already completed. So that's cool. Now the next thing I'm going to do is just create my different floors. So here I'm going to actually call this ground floor. So on the left side you can see that it's updating real time. I have my floor, my views coming in, and for the second floor I'm just going to put first floor, and then I'll be able to cycle through them. Perfect. Now, this is a pretty simple building, much more simple than the multiple floor buildings that I've done in the past. So for this one, what I want to do is explore how to create a structure, how to set your structures within a project. And the way to do that is basically I'm going to model what I did for the Nakakin Hotel, Capsule Tower, and I'm going to create a grid. And from that grid, I'm going to lay out my columns for the building itself. So here what I'm doing is just offsetting the lines. So I have my bays, so to speak, which are 30 by 20. And from that, I'm going to offset those lines by a certain amount, which will allow me to create squares, which in this context would be my structure columns. So here I'm just speeding it up because I was kind of hesitating between techniques. I was studying how I would do this, but I think that the way I did it was pretty slow. Definitely much faster ways to create a grid. But I think it came out pretty clean, honestly. It wasn't too labor intensive. Just basically offsetting some lines. Here I made some mistakes. This is going back and forth. I was trying two different techniques. And then I locked one in midway through, which this whole hesitation maybe to have to do squares again. Much faster ways to do this. I think the best way to do this would be just to offset the lines and then just delete what's excess. The cool thing is that when you create when you offset lines or when you create lines, there's automatic points that are created, which are pretty logical, and it means that your lines are automatically cut and you can just keep the shape that you want within those lines. So here I've completed it. We have my grid, my structural grid with all my columns. I assigned them a function just for color, which is structure. And here what I'm going to do is start to create the different rooms for this ground level. The first floor, so to speak, if you all remember from the presentation, is a totally open floor plan, which is, I want to say, pretty common for architecture studios. I know that I've experienced a lot of open floor plan studios, will places with an open floor plan, and there's just like wooden or just dividers that separate the space into different studios and the different cohorts. So I'm not going to model those dividers in the actual floor plan because they're not solid masses. So instead I'm just going to leave it fully open. But the bottom floor, though, the ground floor, has true walls, so to speak, that separate the room into separate the space into different rooms. So here I'm looking for midpoints to create my lines, and so I can make them very straight. Obviously you do not need to, it's just me. I'm trying to be very pointy on my stuff. Trying to make these as accurate as possible. I'm trying to go for maximal faithfulness on this project. That's why I was looking painstakingly at different places that would label the dimensions of different spaces, and kind of a tough project, I must say, to find all that information. But I think once I'll be done with this, it'll be probably the project that'll be the most faithful out of all my other ones, most true to the original, I want to say, hopefully. At least up until the functions and the area types, because I've never been there and there's no information for which room is what. So I'm going to use my imagination, and it's cool because when I do that, even though it's not faithful, I get to customize the building the way I want, which is interesting, I feel. So here are my two first rooms, and I find a better technique. Instead of looking for midpoints, I'm just going to use the offset tool again, because that's much faster. I'm basically, the way I'm calculating these dimensions is by the tiles that are showcased on the floor plan itself. And I calculated that there are a certain amount of tiles per span of the of the columns, and from that calculation, I'm able to, I think, pretty faithfully estimate the dimension of the rooms. You know. So here I'm going to use the align tool, which is another tool that's going to make my life much easier. And the way this works is you basically select the end of a segment. You gotta select where you want your segment to go, and just select your other segments, and it'll automatically align the two. Okay, I think it's actually easier if I use a regular line, but I will be showing you an example of the that extend tool, because it is much easier and faster to use in some cases. Here I am creating the openings for these rooms, which I believe are the bathrooms. Kind of looks like that to me. There's this kind of like sort of half entrance, and then this entrance, it gets to a small room, and then gets to what I believe to be the bathroom itself, which is pretty common for bathrooms to have a sort of a transitionary space, so to speak. This is what I'm doing. Gonna go ahead and use my offset tool once again. I'm quite slow because I'm going back and forth between the actual floor plans, but I'm glad I can be very faithful in this one. Maybe we'll make it an example project if I'm doing my job extra well. So here I use the trim tool, as you can see, and now I'm going to show you how the extend tool works, if I can get it to work. I actually don't think I've used this tool before, so we'll be learning together. Oh, there we go. Aha. So you have to select the line you want your segment to reach, and then you select the segment itself, and there you go. Very simple to use, very kind of intuitive, I want to say. Took me a solid 40 seconds to learn how that tool works, and through that process I learned how the trim tool works, which is not exactly the same as other tools, but still think it's solid. So here I'm going to create this sort of separation. I don't know exactly what the space is. On the floor plan, there's this tiny space that is between each of the bathrooms, where the only thing that kind of lives in that space is the column itself, and I don't understand that space. I've tried to look for pictures of what it looks like, but it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. I won't lie. I'm trying to imagine how that would look like. I'm guessing it's just like a small corridor that ends to nothing, and there's just a column in the middle. Or maybe that's just how a floor plan is shown, but in reality it is a blocked off space. I don't know, it's kind of interesting. But I guess the only way I could find out is making a trip to IIT and confirm. So here you can see my exact process. I'm calculating the tiles, and that's what the offsets are. And through that, I can be as accurate as possible. And boom, now I have the real dimensions of these rooms. And I'm just going to align everything. mistake there. And there we go. Now that I think about it, I think it's two transitionary spaces. There's a space between these two, and I'm trying to imagine what this could be. Maybe, since there is a room on top of those, maybe it is a space that you go into, you get access to both the transitionary space to go to the bathrooms, and then the door to go to the room above. Which I don't know what that room is yet. When I'll be in kind of a functions and area type mode, I'll try to figure it out. To me, it could be the computer rooms, the CAD rooms, because I feel like the other spaces are spaces that are more suited to be the other area types which I found, which are the library, seminar room, stuff like that. I feel like those are more need to be more structured a certain way. But I mean, the computer labs can be kind of designed floor plan wise in any sorts of ways. I don't see why we could have an irregular floor plan for a sort of CAD room or a computer lab. I don't think there's a need for these kinds of labs to be perfectly uniform. Right, and now we just need to offset that by a certain bit. This is an alternative. If you don't want to use the offset, you can create a line on the side, which is pretty much slower, and I realized that midway through. So I'm going to go back to the faithful offsets. That's one of the cool things about creating these projects, is that I get to kind of learn all the tools and master when to use them and when not to use them, which makes the process of designing much faster, and it makes me just feel more comfortable about what I'm building, and it helps me for my other school projects as well, you know. Just a learning thing, which I think is cool. So now that I have my kind of central rooms, I'm going to create the corridors that kind of flank on the side. These are pretty wide corridors, usually for school and for school buildings. For anything academic, I try to shoot for 8 feet wide, but from what I can calculate, these are 2 tiles wide and the tiles are 5 feet wide, which makes these 10 feet corridors, which are very massive, which I don't think is a bad thing. For this type of building, I don't feel like you're missing any space, so I think you can kind of manage to have very wide corridors. And for an architecture school, that's very important. You know, if you want to carry around your models, your projects, if you have a huge site context model, it's probably like that's foam board or it's been laser cutted, you need a lot of space, you know, a lot of space to bring it up to the top floor where you're going to present it in your studio classes. So here I'm just making these other separations. These rooms are much more simple, just simple kind of dividers. And the cool thing is that these run through the middle of the columns, which makes it much easier for me to kind of measure them. Here I made a mistake. As you can see, it's not perfectly centered, and I don't like when things are not perfect. So I'm going to check the other one. That one looks fine, and I'm going to fix this because I want this to be pristine. I want this to be example project ready, and I'm going to use once again the extend tool, which will make my life so much easier. I wish I would have used this in my other projects, but hey, now I know. So there are my corridors. So the floor plan is starting to take shape. One thing I am missing is egress. Which in this project, it's going to be two staircases that are going to be pretty central to the building. Which I'm not too sure on the coding on that, but I feel like you need egress that's further out. I believe your two egress paths, well, one thing I know is that your two egress paths have to be, I think they have to be 1/3 the distance, corner to corner to your building, something like that. But hey, maybe the rules were different back then, or maybe I'm just not familiar with this kind of project, and it's perfectly legal even to today's standards. I'm not as experienced as me, so I'm going to trust that he knows what he's doing. And maybe this is just because I feel like there's still a good distance between these two, but the fact that we're both centrally kind of throws me off a bit, because the way I like to design my buildings is to have my two egresses completely opposite to each other or pretty far. Which I don't know why I do that, but it just makes more sense to me, to allow people wherever they are in your building to be able to egress out as close as possible. I feel like if it's more spread out, you're covering more ground. But there's no reason for your egress stairs to not be central if they are far enough from each other and if they cover enough ground, which seems to be the case here. So I'm going to make these stairs just once again through the tiles, getting the dimensions, and I'm doing that for the offsets. I'm going to keep kind of the shape of the stairs. I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to try to spice things up a bit and actually design the actual stair itself and the landing, which is going to be that bit at the top. And maybe even if you wanted to spice up your presentation boards, you could absolutely add an arrow, an up arrow or a down arrow, or even a break line through the kind of drawing tools to represent which directions these staircases are showing in. Which one of cool things, Here we're gonna design this other room. I'm going to pick up perfectly the center points. Great thing about this is that I do not need to click on ortho every time if I want to get center points, because I found that I always want to get center points. It has never kind of not been useful in any project. I never find myself turning off center points or endpoints for that reason, or intersections. Always useful things to have at all times when I'm kind of drawing, and never want to be just drawing in the air with nothing connecting to anything. So this is cool. This is like the perfect kind of intermediate version. I don't need to click anything. It's the perfect settings at all times, and I don't understand why we still have this kind of ortho and not ortho version. I think it's for the people that are not using these other architecture tools for architecture, but are using them for more of creating natural objects. But for me, the architecture space, I always want to call back to another line. I always want that line to be connected to another line. It just seems much better, instead of having to log into a new computer and then I need to change all my settings for when I'm using other programs. So here I'm just going to create the curvature of the corridors themselves, so that they give off directly to the egress stairs. I actually like the aesthetic of this floor plan because it's pretty symmetrical, but it's not perfectly symmetrical, which scratches an itch in my brain. I kind of enjoy it. And I already know that one of these two large spaces is going to be the library. I don't know which one I'm going to choose yet, but this one is going to, well, the top portion is going to be a bit larger, because in the bottom I'm going to have what I'm pretty sure I'm going to make the seminar room, because it seems like a pretty big space. And I don't know, it just feels right to put it there. So here I'm going to use the offset tool because that room is kind of offset to the bottom. Perfect. And we're going to use the extend tool to extend the line all the way through. So easy, simple, perfect. Now I have the base layout for my ground floor. All right. Now we're gonna get to creating kind of a stairwell that's on the outside of a building, which now that I see this, I realize I'm going to have to change my my boundaries, my setbacks as well, to kind of accommodate to that. Because I think the size of the building that I got originally was the size of the building without that sort of staircase. That seems to be a main circulator to the other floor, which I think is cool. I'm a big fan of circulators that go outside. I think it's great when you're able to see people circulating around the building, and it's kind of a nice thing to have, you know. Two staircases that are very central, inside deep, and two others that are kind of outside. And now I just realized, I think the reason why these egresses are able to be so close to each other is because you probably have an access to the outside wherever you are in the building. Since every floor, even this basement floor, has access to the ground plane, since it has 6 inches of it that are kind of above grade. I think you have an exit at grade at basically any point, which allows you to, even though the building is pretty large, allows you to have your egress stairs pretty centrally. So now we're going to work on the first floor, since I basically finished the actual kind of dimensions of the rooms on the ground floor. I'm going to cycle to my first floor on the left hand side through my views, and I'm going to underlay the ground floor. On the right side you can see there's the underlay option. Once I click on my floor plan, and I can change a bunch of stuff such as the labels, the size of the labels, etc. Stuff that I want to showcase on the actual floor. And I can also underlay different floors, which highlights it in blue, so that I can know where stuff is. Because on this floor as well, there are some things that need to be measured perfectly, and it does make it much easier if I base it off the columns, even though there are no columns on this floor. So having the columns still there, I'm able to kind of navigate my way around where stuff is supposed to be. So here I have the other kind of end of the staircase. It's right there. And taking a look at the dimensions. Just to make sure I'm designing properly. And one thing there is, it seems to be a very skinny sort of room. And also what seems to be two vertical, very skinny, thin cores that are central in the building. Because even with the great system that Mies put in place, basically turning this building inside out and having it basically hung from the top, I feel like, well, definitely there are some pieces of structure that need to be inside of a building, and those are those two very skinny cores. But still incredibly impressive and very unique to have thought of that. And I wonder if in today's world with our technology, we would be able to replicate this kind of construction without having these skinny cores, and just have a straight up 120 feet by 220 feet completely open space, you know, which I think could be cool. There may be some precedents on that. I'll have to look it up. Here I'm going to drop the size of my labels, and I'm going to keep playing that because I want it to be just small enough so that it doesn't look weird, just like that, but not big enough so that I'll have the dimensions of the area for these columns, for these structural spaces, because I don't want that to show. I think it's too much noise. But here I seem to have landed pretty well. An alternative would be, as I said before, to just turn off some of these labels, but I like to see that, you know. I might turn off a couple. I'm trying to see like what is the most useful things to display, and I think I'm just going to turn all of them off for now and just have the area types. But yeah, I might change that later on when I want to display it on the boards, because these save views, which is a camera at the top right, which basically saves the options I put in the view tab, which is nice because sometimes I just want to see stuff and I don't want it to be permanently saved. These save views save to whichever view you've put on your boards. So if I were to drag this floor plan onto my boards and I would change, for example, to display the area, and I click save view, it would automatically change on the boards, which is actually very useful because it allows me to make modifications on my project without having to go back and redo floor plans. You know, there are a lot of times where you've designed a floor plan, you know, or something like that, and you realized you forgot something in the actual kind of design of the building. So you go back to your actual 3D model and you change that thing, and then now you can realize, oh god, I need to change my floor plans now. If the case is that have disconnected kind of files, which can be a true pain. But here everything is in one place, so it makes it much easier to make these kinds of modifications. And these kinds of modifications are also extendable through the metrics themselves, which we'll see in a bit. I will not get ahead of myself. But I think looking at the metrics is going to be a cool thing. So here I got the dimensions of this kind of like skinny room in the middle, which I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know what I'm going to name it as. And also I got the dimensions of the cores. So here at the bottom there's what I believe to be the entry staircase. And I'm going to line myself up with this circulator. And so I can kind of get a sense of what I'm doing. And because it seems to be pretty lined up in the floor plans that I got. So we're going to take a look at that. I'm just going to look at the way this staircase kind of pans out. It seems to be about 20 feet. Let's do that. And there we go, just 5. I'm just going to freehand it a bit because I'm trying to get some pretty good dimensions. This is a point where the staircase is not going to be exactly at an inch. It's going to be a couple inches off, I believe, if not a foot off or two, because the kind of technique I use to get the dimensions this whole time falls apart when it comes to stairs because there are no tiles on the stairs themselves. So it's just going to be some freehanding, but that's all right. I'm pretty confident with the way I laid out the rest of the building, so I think I did a pretty good job so far of making this faithfully in terms of kind of dimensions, so to speak, when it comes to the actual kind of functions and area types is another story. But hey, if one day I go visit the building, which I most likely will, I'll come back and I swear I'll fix the functions for all of you. If this project becomes an example project, if we decide to put it as a project for all of you to play with, I will be changing the functions and the area types to make it as accurate as possible. Because my idea is to have these projects be realistic, either realistic and fully fictional, or realistic and faithful to the originals by respect. So here I'm going to create a new function, which is going to be circulation, and based off that function, I'm going to create an area type, which is going to be stairs. And this is a great way to kind of organize, in terms of the layers, the different functions and area types that buildings have. And it's just very simple. You know, here I'm just going to make that academic spaces, and based off academic spaces, I'm going to name that studio space. Right, just studios. That's a studio space. There we go. Nice pinkish color, which I'm going to keep because I think it's cool. And for this interior skinny part, I'm trying to think what would suit this spot best. Because I'm thinking at the beginning, I was like, maybe this is a bathroom, but it's way too skinny. So now I'm thinking maybe this is a utility closet, or for mechanical equipment. That seems like the most obvious thing. But I think I'm just going to probably be broad and just call that support space, which is often what I do. When I don't know what something is, when I have no clue, I just call it support space, or I just make it mechanical. Just put support. And I've got this bit, which is going to be the staircase as well. There we go. Now let's go to the ground level. Let's label the ends of these stairs, which is going to be stair as well. And then let's go to the corridors. There's already a preset area type for corridors, and there's also one for cores, which is cool because you're always going to have that in your project. And there are also a bunch of other preset area types and functions, which are pretty common for projects. There's one for residential, and even there are area types for the residential function, which are different bedrooms that you could have in your design. So it's a good thing to have. And here I'm going to make these spaces, as I said, bathroom. So I'm going to go in support, and from support I'm going to make those bathrooms. I wonder if these are ADA. I'm guessing they've changed it since then. Building of this caliber has to, right? Now is a real question, which function or area type do I want to give to each of these rooms? Because a lot of them are very similar in size, and I'm not too sure what I'll make of them. I'm thinking library for this big room, because I just feel like a huge library is very cool. Maybe for these two I'll make them library. And just imagine that this kind of wall has a doorway that connects it to, even though it's not present on the floor plans. Or maybe it's just two different libraries that are not connected to each other. That could be a possibility. And for these bottom ones, let's make them academic and make them faculty offices, which is one thing that kind of lacked so far. For this middle portion, that is a sort of entrance, or I might put that corridor space still because it seems to be fully open space, with no distinctions between 2 staircases. Another space that I saw that most likely would be very large would be the wood shop, which is labeled as a wood shop slash workshop in the research I've made. So I imagine it's a very huge space. And this one's going to be the seminar room, which I imagine is pretty big as well. If you want to hold some big events, maybe even a end of semester gathering. I definitely see that being possibly held there. For these top, now there's the last free spaces. There's that awkward space in the middle where you can see that there's this kind of like skinny sort of end that goes in between the bathrooms, which is weird. I have no idea what that could be. But it seems to be like that in the floor plans. But once again, I think I'll just go with my gut and make that the computer lab. And for these two, I think we're gonna make them academic, and let's do lecture space, just some normal classrooms. And for this one, let's make. Oh, it's still gonna be academic. Academic and CAD. No, actually, I should name that computer lab. That's more intuitive. Perfect. And for this intermediary space, we're gonna make that a corridor still. And there you go. That's all the different area types listed for the building. So basically at this point, this part of the project is done. Let's look at it from the top, and I'm going to change the boundaries as I said I would, because if the building is outside of the boundaries, I will not be able to make price estimates on the building, since it doesn't respect the code in this case. So I'm just gonna pretend that the boundaries were much bigger this whole time and just freehand move them a bit. And let's take one last gander at our floor plans, and that looks good. That looks good. Now, as you can see on the right, I have a bunch of different metrics that are set up, which basically tells you the square footage of every single one of my rooms, which is great for kind of visualizing stuff, and also good for kind of imagining what kind of metrics I would want to lay in my boards later on. But one thing that's interesting is if I click on the kind of gear on the right hand side, I can set prices and different metrics to my project. And here I'm just going to delete the functions and area types that I'm not using in this building. But one thing that's interesting is I can add subcounts to these different area types. So here I'm going to add one for students, just for show. But it's an interesting thing to have. But yeah, here as you can see, there's also different area types that are linked to the different functions. A bunch of them are area types that I don't need, such as residential ones. So I'm only going to focus on the area types of the actual space that I use, the academic area types, if you will. And I'm just going to freehand estimate the pricing of different spaces. Not going to be as accurate as an ACK again, where I basically got exactly the price of a building, because for this project I do not have the exact price of each space. Here I'm just going to delete the residential thing, but I'm going to use my best judgment, imagining like a lot of these spaces are, especially the studio spaces, are just very large open spaces. It's probably need a special flooring. But yeah, as you can see on the right hand side, I have the cost estimate that's been calculated for me, which is cool. And if I were to set a budget, it would let me know if I were to be above or under budget by a certain percentage, which is a cool thing to display. Now I'm going to go into boards, and I'm going to create my presentation, which would be what I would show the clients. So here I'm just going to click on the sheet, which is on the top left, and I'm just going to set tabloid. And you can either keep creating sheets if you want different dimensions, but here I'm just going to, I just pressed copy paste since I want the same dimensions. And I'm going to make these in kind of square shape for this time because I want to switch it up. But a good way also to do it would be your title page at the very top and then have a row of your different pages, different sheets that display stuff. Here, if you go to the right hand side, I'm going to select a nice view to have for one of my close titles. And you can play a lot of the different view styles that are available. So here you can change the kind of shadows, which can also be very useful if you want to do a shadow study, because it's quite accurate, quite customizable. And if you press on the bottom in styles, you can create your own style, and you can modify things such as the background, remove the edges of certain buildings, remove the shadows, stuff like that if you want to showcase some specific stuff, or if you just want to make a pretty kind of view like I'm doing right now. I'm going to choose a nice blue to model the sky, and I'm going to remove that site context edges because I like the contrast between the site context and the actual building. I like having maximum contrast when I'm making these kinds of views because it allows me to kind of put the building in itself, I kind of showcase just that, you know. Once I'm done, I created a new view on the left hand side and I saved it and I just dragged it right on my board. It's that simple. No need to export or do anything of the sort. It's just dragging right through. And like I said before, whichever changes I make to the actual view, if I were to turn it and press the save view icon, it would change the view on that sheet automatically, which is cool. Here, as you can see, just dragged in my floor plans. I'm going to change the scale so that they're both to scale. And you can see I have a bunch of different options. And we're just going to lay these one next to the other. There you go, do a bit of cropping to make all that clean. And there you go. Even though it looks small and you can't really see what the area types are, these are pretty good quality, so you can zoom in quite far and still see exactly what's written on, which is nice, you know. Pretty scalable stuff. So right now what I'm adding is a wait a second, customize this a bit, a metrics table. And what this allows me to do is display certain metrics from my project, and I can display a lot of metrics at the same time, which is different from the metrics graphs or metrics charts that we have available. So here, as you can see, I can display a bunch of different stuff. I can choose a view, which I'm always going to choose 3D because that shows basically my whole project. But as views, I can also just select like a floor if I want to just show a specific metric on a specific floor, if I want to get really into it. But here, as you can see, if I click the different tabs, I can change and just display different stuff, such as the area types per unit. I can display efficiency, stuff like that. Basically anything I want to do, and all of this, of course, is perfectly customizable, as you can see on the right, with text, table, stuff like that. And I think I'm just going to take this table and just put it to the side right now, because on this one, I want to put a metrics chart instead. Metrics charts, very similar as well. You choose your view and then you choose your source area types, but for these, you cannot display multiple stuff on the same kind of metrics source. It's only going to be one type of metric at a time, but for these, they're going to be nice and aesthetic, and you're going to have multiple different types of of options to choose from for displays, such as a bar right here, and you can also choose where you want the text to be aligned to compared to the bar. And I'm going to choose this layout specifically because I want to have a nice image of my whole building, just kind of wedged between the two. So here in design options at the bottom, I just turn off the kind of eye to remove the context and just isolate my building by itself. And I'm going to remove the background of that so that it's a nice image that I'm able to just wedge there. I'm not too happy with that right now because it's kind of empty at the top and I don't want to add anything there apart from the title. So I'll probably move that at some point. But yeah, it's all these are nice options to have, especially the design option. Something I will be showing off more in the future projects. Another kind of metrics tool that you can use is the metrics, the dynamic text, which is even more kind of like small scale than the actual charts themselves, because it's only going to be a single metric at a time. Which here you'll see I can just choose like the gross building area, etc. And you might wonder like, oh, I could just write this down with regular text. But the cool thing about this is, once again, it's all tied back to your project. So if you change anything in your project, it will change this dynamic text, which is why it's dynamic in the first place. So here I'm just going to choose to display some metrics to populate the empty space, but it just looks more goofy now. So I'll probably switch those two around, switch an image of my whole building. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Not perfect harmony in my sheets. As you can tell, presentation is not my strong suit. I like designing my buildings, but I'm not the best kind of aesthetic guy in terms of creating sheets and portfolios of such. But I can hold my own, you know, and I do a job. And here we're just going to create a sort of title for these small sheets so that the client knows what they're looking at, or whoever these sheets are assigned to. And let's put a nice little font right there. And we're going to match all this text to match that font. So we go back one by one. And yeah, bunch of different options for customizing your text as well, which is nice. It allows you to not have to spend so much time on other tools. You can just do it all here, and yeah, it keeps your files from being too heavy if you were to export stuff multiple times. You know, a lot of times you need a tool for a very specific thing, and by opening and saving, saving on multiple programs at the same time, it makes it so that your file gets really heavy at the end, which is nice here that it's all compacted. Now what I'm going to do is pick some nice pictures that I find online of the actual project itself, like this one, which I think is cool. I'm just going to lay there and have these two kind of lined up elements flanking each other. I think I did this for one of the other projects, this kind of style, which I actually liked as a display. And the title, it seems to be not matching with the actual dimensions of the thing. So you know what, I might actually not even put a title on that sheet and just leave it blank, which I don't think is too much of a problem because it's only showing one table, so it's not you don't need a title to tell you what this sheet is about, you know, to tell you what you're looking at. And now we're going to take this other picture and use that as a title image. which I think is going to look cool. And one thing I realized when I was looking for pictures for this project is that they're all from the same angle for some reason. They're all just like facing the building. This is the only one that's kind of like at a diagonal. And I suspect it's because the building is just doesn't look that good from a side. It's got to be that. I don't see any other reason. Um, but it's weird because I really like this diagonal picture. I think it's really much better. But it also might be because the trees are blocking the view. That might be the reason. So here I just added a little gray rectangle in the background, which I do pretty often as a kind of aesthetic thing. And I think it actually matches kind of the Mises style, you know, very simple, simplistic, some gray, or just matches the architects of that era. I feel gives off old school modernist vibes. And yeah, we're basically done with the sheets now. Get a little title, and I'm gonna copy paste this text in the bottom to put the location. It's gonna be Chicago, Illinois. But first, let me look. Is anything else I should display? It seems that's it. There we go. And perfect. Should I put IIT? Yeah, I think I'll put IIT. And there we go. And now we've got our sheets perfectly organized. Looks great, I believe. And let's take a look at our project one last time. I'm pretty happy about this whole project, and I'm glad I was able to make it faithfully. And I hope you enjoyed watching me with this redesign, and I hope you'll try creating projects like this too.